I feel like nowadays it's becoming clearer and clearer that we now live in a world where, in relationships, we're told to walk away as soon as things get hard. You have people tell you things all the time like, if it's hard, it's not meant to be, love shouldn't feel hard, or worst of all, never settle. It's crazy because the same people who go on to regurgitate these mantras are never the same ones who are actually in any relationship. They're not the ones who were able to maintain anything long term, and they're certainly not the ones who are actually capable of laying down the strong foundations needed for a successful relationship. What they were, however, were quitters. People who are only ever in it for the good times, people unwilling to sacrifice their own happiness to give back to their partner, and I guess they're really just selfish in the end. Relationships at the end of the day are always going to be give and take. And unfortunately, society has been encouraging the idea that we should be taking more than we should be giving. And it's about time we change that. So, with all of that out of the way, in this video, I wanted to go ahead and talk about my experiences in the modern dating world, my issues with it, red flags to look out for, and how I ultimately broke free from the sea of shallow fishes by sifting out the dirt from the gold. So, to get into this, I want to go ahead and give you some of my background. So, I've been in the online dating scene for a while, and to say it was a cesspool wouldn't be enough in the slightest. At the end of the day, it was a whole ass shit ocean I was forced to swim in, and whether it was from the lack of commitment, constantly having to invest more energy than the other person, or simply put, an overabundance of vapid and shallow fishes in said shit ocean. Online dating is rough and really highlights how far we've strayed from developing actually meaningful and real relationships, let alone connections. During my time on Tinder, Hinge, or Bumble, I was fortunate enough to have a decent amount of dates, but the catch with all of them was that they would just really want attention and validation from me more than they actually wanted the prospect of having a legitimate relationship. And one of the things I would see all over the place was that 99% of them would regurgitate and throw out this line. I'm not ready for a serious relationship right now, but maybe in a little while we can be official. It's like, bro, you literally list in your profile that you were looking for something real and weren't into being casual. What do you even mean by that? Now, what I later learned was that it meant that they were okay with having the dating experience, going out to the movies, dinner, whatever, but weren't ever ready for the commitment aspect of said relationship. They wanted to reap the rewards of having a partner without giving up their freedom. The sentence, I'm not ready for a relationship right now, was code talk for I want to use the ever living hell out of you and have you wrapped around my finger until I can find the next best option to dump you for. And it's utterly depressing how many men and women will pull that shit out in the online space knowing damn well what they're doing. So, what I want you to realize is that whenever you hear those words, that's when you should really begin packing your bags. At the end of the day, if they're not ready for a relationship, they're not going to be ready for you. And there's not anything you can do to convince them otherwise, which is why you need to move on at that point. It's also super important to respect yourself during those times and fight back against a desire to push or chase people like them because it will just lead to you getting hurt in the long run. In order for the relationship to work, you're both going to need to work on it. And if one party isn't willing to put in the work just because they're not ready, then that prospect falls apart right then and there. So stop burning yourself to keep them warm just for the hope that it could work out because honestly, there is no hope. The longer you're pursuing somebody who's not sure of you, the longer it will take to find that man or woman who genuinely loves you for you and is always going to be ready for you. Now, connecting back to my experiences, when I first matched with my partner, one of the distinguishing parts about her was the fact that she was always ready for me. She returned all the energy that I put in. I would ask her out on dates and she would immediately agree. I would tell her that I was only in this for the long run and she'd say the same thing. Now, when we did go out on dates, she would try to make every effort to make it last as long as possible because she wanted to be involved with me. Really, she was confident in her choice and wasn't always on the lookout for that next better option because she liked what she had. Had I just continued to try and prove myself to and pursue those people who weren't ever 100% sure with their choice in me, I would have missed out on the dream woman that I had. So please, stop lighting yourself on fire so you can find that person for you. But with that addressed, let's roll on to the next part maintaining the relationship. All right, so let's say you're fortunate enough to find somebody you're willing to spend the rest of your life with. What mistakes do we need to avoid to try to keep the relationship going nice and strong? One of the biggest things I see that absolutely demolishes any relationship is the expectation that the honeymoon period, or the spark, is always going to be there and that the relationship should honestly always feel easy. This is especially true with social media and shit perpetuating the idea that every part of a relationship should be nothing but sunshine and rainbows. But the tough reality is that it isn't. People often make the mistake of equating infatuation in the beginning with love, and honestly, I hate to break it to you, but it isn't. As a relationship progresses, that's when love legitimately begins to grow. And honestly, with love, it really isn't about getting that rush of butterflies in your stomach 24/7 or being perpetually passionate. It's really just about showing up and sticking around even when things get hard. It's about having those hard conversations you don't want to have, and it's about staying confident in your choice to stay, even if there isn't much romance or passion anymore. Because guess what? That person you're with, assuming they're a good partner, became your other half and would rather stick by you than to give it all up to get those butterflies from anybody else. The butterflies will come and go, but that doesn't mean your relationship has to. And one of my biggest pet peeves is hearing the words, the spark isn't there anymore. Because I've seen so many secure and healthy relationships get thrown away just because somebody had the expectation that the bonfire of emotions they felt in the beginning was supposed to stay throughout the entirety of the relationship. The truth is that that bonfire that burns brightly burns out much quicker than that slow burning reliable campfire because it chews through all that fuel so much quicker. In other words, strive to get your warmth from the campfire in your relationships. Just because things aren't passionate 24/7 doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your relationship. Honestly, it's normal. However, with all that being said, at the same time, I also do want you to strive to keep the romance alive any way you can. And to be honest, that's something that's incredibly hard, even for me. So, for example, one point that proves this is that over this last year in my relationship, I've had so many huge life changes that honestly left me with barely any free time to do much of anything. In short, I recently got into my dream fire department and was subject to a 7 month long rigorous fire academy that left me smoked and exhausted after every day. On top of navigating through a pay cut and struggling to make ends meet, all the while going through the process of buying a house, it was probably one of the most stressful periods of my life. To keep it simple, I did not have a lot of free time to be a great partner who went on dates all the time and really just be emotionally available. However, despite all this, me and my partner both understood that it was a temporary life adjustment and that shit would get better with time. Despite all the stress, and even though we stopped going out on dates, she still decided that she'd stay with me, even if all she really saw was stress and exhausted fire at far. Because at the end of the day, she loved me for me. If the spark was what defined love, then I would be left during those hard moments. But fortunately for me, that wasn't the case. Because love is staying even when things aren't easy, when moods change, when life shifts, and not just staying when it's convenient. And always remember that. Now, rolling on to the next session, the last thing I want to cover here is honestly just recapping some of the red flags to look out for when you are in the dating world. First and foremost, the biggest one to look out for are people who don't know what they want. In order for a relationship to work, both sides are going to need to be confident in the person that they're with, and the expectation that they have for a relationship needs to be made very clear. When you don't have that, you're constantly in the gambit of trying to figure out whether or not the person you're talking to is actually going to be your partner. Going back to what we talked about earlier, a lot of times when people don't know what they want, they'll just use you as a stopgap measure to get the validation they need to feel good before throwing you away for that better option. If it isn't a resounding yes, then it's a no. So don't waste your time when people try to keep you attached to a leash and lead you on, because once again, it's just going to keep you from meeting that person you deserve. Now, moving on to the second red flag to look out for, that's going to be dryness or lack of interest. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean having to utterly carry every conversation you have when talking to a person. This is super common, especially online, and I can't tell you the amount of times where I've debated bashing my head against my phone screen because a person I matched with has the conversational skills of a goldfish strung out on fence. It just isn't worth it. What it ultimately shows is that that person really isn't as interested in you as you think they are. And the fact that they're not trying to learn about you shows that they're only looking for short term investments they can drop as soon as they get bored of you. On the flip side of things, though, if you really love somebody or like somebody for who they are, for the love of God, actually make an effort to learn about them. Ask them about their hobbies, what they enjoy, find that common ground, and most importantly, relate to them. When you're involved, it shows that you really want to be there, and I lost count of all the times my friends, men and women alike, complained about how dry the dude or lady they matched with is. Don't be like them, and don't let being bad at conversing be your excuse not to do so. Now, the very last red flag to look out for are just people who got out of relationship. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but every time I've tried to pursue things with somebody who freshly left their partner, it ultimately just resulted in them cutting things off. For reasons like, I still have feelings for them. Even though they cheated on me with my best friend, grandma, grandpa, mother, father, brother, sister, my pet hamster, and even my fucking goldfish. I still want to be with them because guess what? Accidents happen, so we're gonna make it work. Jokes aside, after leaving a relationship, you need to have time to process and heal, and 1 to 2 months afterwards really isn't a lot of time. Chances are their ex is going to be on the forefront of their minds for quite some time, 24/7, and they just need the time and space to get over them. A lot of times you'll feel like you're just a rebound because guess what? You probably are the rebound. And it's just going to leave you feeling more hurt when you're dealing with that fear. So don't be that stopgap relationship measure and find that person who's ready for you. Now, to get this wrapped up now, I hope this video helped you to some degree, and whether it was talking about how love isn't just about having butterflies, not walking away as soon as things get hard, or simply pushing past the shallow surface level situationships to find something real, don't chase others who won't do the same for you, and find that person who respects you for you. Have a great day until next time, guys. Peace.